Hello, viewers. Greetings for the day. Welcome to another episode of the NIBM Podcast series, NIBM Insight. This is Dr. Smita Trivedi, Associate Professor at NIBM Pune. Today we have a very interesting episode lined up. Our PGDM student Ajinkya Shinde is going to talk to my senior colleague Shri B Ashok, who is an Adjunct Faculty in the area group of Human Resource Management at NIBM. Prior to joining NIBM, Sir was General Manager HR with Central Bank of India, which is one of India's major public sector banks. Sir has held a couple of international assignments. He was the head of credit, Indo-Zambia Bank, Lusaka, Zambia, as well as advisor enterprise development in the Commonwealth Secretariat, London. Shri Ashok has held board level positions as well. He was the independent director of the Indo-Zambia Bank, Lusaka, Zambia, and the director of Uttar Banga Kshetriya Gramin Bank, a regional rural bank under Central Bank of India. In today's podcast, we have a very, very exciting topic lined up. Sir is going to discuss with Ajinkya how it is important to be aware of one's own biases and fallacies, and what is the role of critical thinking in decision making. We all know of cognitive biases and fallacies, but do we know how they are changing in the digital era? That also is going to be discussed in the podcast, especially how the biases are changing in the context of artificial intelligence. Happy listening.
Hello all, I am Ajinkya Shinde from the batch PGDM 2325 NIBM, and today we have with us Mr. B Ashok, who is an Adjunct Faculty in the area of Human Resource Management NIBM. Hello sir.
Hi.
So I have some questions for you. I understand that as a faculty at NIBM, you're working on critical thinking topic, and I also, after seeing our curriculum, I found it that it's also a part of our elective. So what exactly is the idea behind critical thinking?
Yeah. Well, let me begin with thanking you for having me here in your podcast. It's good to have it in outdoors, that's beautiful. So critical thinking, there is no acceptable definition of the concept of critical thinking. Many scholars have tried to approach the idea of critical thinking from different angles. But in the context of business management, what we talk about is you have information, you have pieces of information coming to you. If you can connect the dots on a more rational way, and for which you may have to question your own beliefs and concepts which you have already have in your mind. If that can be developed, that is critical thinking. In the context of business, it's quite important, very important. So the basic idea of critical thinking is question yourself. It is challenging your own beliefs and assumptions. All of us as human beings have what you call as the biases, cognitive biases. Cognition is a psychological term where I mean, for a layman's understanding, cognition is nothing but understanding.
Yeah.
Having reached certain level in our life, you are completing your MBA. Now you have acquired quite a lot of information, knowledge, and perhaps some bits of wisdom also.
Yeah.
But is it the right thing? Is it the right way to use when you face business decisions or any other decisions in your life? So can you question your own beliefs? And these beliefs we are talking about beliefs not in the generic term, a generic idea of it. What I am saying is belief as a cognitive bias. You have cognitive biases. We all have. Now, critical thinking will ask you to question your own cognitive biases.
So in a way, critical thinking would mean the ability or the skill to do the right thing or take the right decisions at the right time.
Yes, but then the right decision and all is something which has to be proved outside you.
They're relative.
Yeah, you can't decide that. But at that point of time, is your decision well informed? And have you analyzed and looked at and analyzed all the variables, to use your term in risk management and all, or all the information available, and can you connect the dots to get the whole picture, the big picture? Then, if the decision is made based on getting an idea of the big picture, then the chances of that decision being questioned in future are compared. Of course, there is no guarantee that decisions will always be, but then it makes a better decision. I wouldn't say the right decision, a better decision.
Yeah, something to back for it.
Yes.
So you also talked about cognitive biases. So regarding that, I have a question. So how important is it to business managers or people in leadership roles to set aside their cognitive biases?
Well, it is. Let me tell you. Let me start with a negative response. It may not be possible for anyone to set aside all the cognitive biases, because what is the exact number of cognitive biases people have is anybody's guess. So it could be. You depending upon your upbringing, your socio-cultural background, the cognitive biases are unique to individuals. There are some certain common cognitive biases also. But when it comes to the context of business, there are many instances where the people who could not address their cognitive biases had caused, even the company itself going bankrupt. For example, I don't know. If you know about Ajinkya, the first prototype or idea of a digital camera. Any idea who brought a digital camera and all?
Canon?
No, these are all the obvious names: Canon, Nikon. All these are the market, the leaders of digital technology. But people wouldn't remember that the first prototype or the idea of a digital camera was developed by an innovative and bright engineer who was working with Kodak. Kodak was a film company, the photo films. And the bosses said, no, this is not going to be. We have been doing business. We know what business is. We will be in this business. Now, this particular bias is called a status quo bias. You don't want to question your own status quo. The way in which you have been doing things. You don't want to change it. So the status quo bias, rest is history, as they say. We all know that what happened to. And I don't know how many years from then, Kodak went for bankruptcy, and now the photo films are, for some scientific use it may be, but then it's I am a museum piece. Yeah, right. You put it rightly. It could be a museum piece now. So there are many instances. You look at Netflix, for example. When the Netflix was being launched, there were no takers for that.
Yeah.
Now Netflix could, push out all other existing players who could not change themselves and question their own status quo biases. And this one bias I'm talking about. There are many biases. In fact, Dr. Daniel Kahneman mentions about comparatively a newer bias, like an optimism bias. You are always optimistic, but then he says, Dr. Kahneman says, is that optimism bias is, the optimistic people only lead the whole world, But then you can't afford to have or be a victim of your own optimism bias, So quite a number of biases are there which have got, unless we address those biases, our decisions may kill the organization in which we work, right? Hope I have answered you.
Yeah. So your examples from historic pieces that have that give good examples of cognitive biases, it was very helpful. Now coming to the managerial decision making, how important is it to understand the process of decision making in the in the backdrop of critical thinking?
Yes. We all have, there is a decision making inventory you can make. We have different types of decision making styles. And in my experience and in my psychologists may differ, but I believe that these decision-making styles are not static. You're exposed to new ideas, new ways of thinking will change the way in which you look at decisions also. Now, a decision making can be done without any thinking also. You know, there is something called confirmation bias. That is what, I'll give you a very simple example. You decided to buy a particular brand of automobile and you have decided on a particular color also, but you have not bought it yet.
Yeah.
You are just weighing, but you have most probably you are going to buy this car and this color only. Once you have taken that, the primary decision in your mind, you go out in the road, you will only see this color and the same, car only.
Yeah.
So that statistically is not correct. All cars are there, but you wanted to see what you want to see.
Exactly.
It's a confirmation bias. Then your decision, you have taken a decision, you're backtesting that decision with this type of, confirmation, looking for a proof to confirm your own decisions. That could be suicidal in many times, So, unless you address this bias, decision making comes out of critical thinking. You can take decisions without any critical thinking also, but then, you will be a victim of your own biases and fallacies.
Yeah.
And it may suffer. So, decision making, to make better decisions, critical thinking is important. And I need not explain it in the context of business, right?
Exactly. So, confirmation bias is something I think we all have experienced a lot of.
Yeah, I too have. It's not that I teach critical thinking, and I'm not totally free from some of these biases. But then the importance of addressing these biases is something which we need to discuss and understand.
So, today we are going ahead with a lot of technology in the business, so it's not as much as man controlled as it was before. So in terms of AI, artificial intelligence and ML,
I got your question.
we are moving ahead that these biases are not in these machines or AI ML. They take informed decisions on the basis of data what they have, on whatever past experience they have. So how would you suggest that critical thinking comes in the picture here?
That's a very intelligent question. You have added that, they don't have biases and all. I doubt, it's a very complex question to answer. Let me tell you one thing. These artificial intelligence or machine learning, for whatever it is called, are all based on data. You said that. Then these machines correlate data. Professor Noam Chomsky, one of the greatest contemporary thinkers, mentioned that human mind is not a statistical correlation. It's not a machine which will engage in statistical correlation. We are not wired for statistical correlation. We make meaning, our sense of, little information, and we try to explain things. It is not statistical correlation. So there is a difference between the human mind and this. But when it comes to the models, artificial intelligence and these type of models have the risk of bias because of the people who are writing those algorithms. The people who write those algorithms, and if they are, if you are writing a program and you say that it's a loan approval program for a bank, you're a bank management student, it's a loan approval program for a bank, and you're writing that a man with a bald head and white beard should not be given any loan. Your artificial intelligence machine will behave like that.
So the conditions that we provide are...
Yes, exactly. Now, so you cannot be sure, it's impossible to avoid biases. That is why many banks and many organizations are now talking about, in fact, they have advanced in the thought process of setting in place ethical standards for developing artificial intelligence and all. That's one part of it. Second, this is another way of looking at decisions and information.
Yeah.
Right? This gives you a new type of cognitive bias. You can be a victim or a slave of an artificial intelligence machine, and you think that there is a situation, you can't take a decision, you'll ask the some artificial intelligence program, and that will give you a response based on whatever it has, and you believe that whatever the machine says should be right.
Yeah.
So there is a new type of cognitive bias, emerging. I mean, it always emerges. For example, what do you understand by the term Gothic?
Gothic. So in terms of contemporary culture, goth is often referred to as dark side, or dark culture.
Yeah, that's okay. That's this is the Urban Dictionary type of answer, which I'm looking at. Generally people, Gothic is a font,
Yeah. Also, yeah.
but then Gothic is a historical term.
Which would refer to
Gothic buildings are there.
Okay.
Gothic architecture
Gothic
is there.
architecture.
And Gothic language. For example, if you look at the Asterix comics and all, you will find that there are people who speak Gothic language, the Gaulish language, and the Gaul language and all. So Gothic is not a font.
Yeah.
Or a negative, or I wouldn't say negative, an interesting explanation given by your urban dictionaries and all, which is not.
Yeah.
So these type of, for example, urban dictionary was a concept which I never heard of when we were growing up. I was your age, perhaps I never heard of this term. These are the technology brings in new biases, cognitive biases, and fallacies also. The fallacies are there. You have behavioral heuristics also. So all these things get evolved as technology gets evolved. So it is very important, or I would say all the more important, that you address those biases also. So the critical thinking is also an evolving area. It's not a static thing. So it's very important for you to address all the emerging biases as well.
All right. So one short question. It's rather a personal one. That as emerging management students, how is critical thinking important? Because I see critical thinking coming as a part of experience. Understanding what decisions, what data to look, what to do in what situations. It comes with experience. So someone with a recent into the market, who's a fresher, how would he develop those skills in a short period of time?
Okay, that's a very intelligent question. It's very important, very relevant also. I'm glad that you asked this. What I would say is, critical thinking is irrelevant without a context. Now, you are joining, after completion of course, you will be joining some financial institution.
Yeah.
You have a new context. But today, right now, as a student, also you have a context. Okay. So for every context, critical thinking is important. Critical thinking doesn't work in a vacuum. It has to, there has to be a context for that. Well, there are two types of, there are some scholars who look at critical thinking from two types of, angles. One is like, they call it as little thinking critical thinking. Little. That means you have a context within that. Within the box, you need to do the critical thinking. Business situations, your studies, you are seeking an employment, whether to join or I want to go somewhere else. These are all the decisions which you may have to take shortly. So that is within your context.
Yeah.
Now, the other one they talk about is the big thinking, critical thinking. That is more of a philosophical nature and literary theories and philosophical theory, critical thinking. Critical theory and stuff like that. That's more of a broad. That may require a scholarly intervention and scholarly efforts from your own. Unless you understand those things, you may not be equipped with the understanding and skills for that type of macro outside the box critical thinking. Whereas for the within the box, that is little thinking critical thinking, which I don't buy that. There are some scholars who talk about these type of two types of critical thinking, but critical thinking is important in your context also. Don't worry about the experience. Your experience gets richer if with the critical thinking. So you may get 10 years, 15 years of work experience, and if you could not address the cognitive biases, those experience ultimately tend to be worthless. I wouldn't say meaningless.
It's other way around.
It is other way around.
Yeah. So I think I would like to thank you, sir, for blessing us with this with your presence in this podcast. Thank you all.
And I would also thank Ajinkya and the crew also. You have been very cooperative. Thank you very much. And I should thank Dr. Elizabeth also, who is in charge of this. And she was after me to join you for the podcast. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.